Friday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Note on YouTube for February the 24th. Yes, we do actually have back-to-back shows here today, and things are looking up in the nation's capital for their football team, at least. Their basketball team isn't going anywhere. Their baseball team isn't going anywhere. The jury's still out on their hockey team, and their football team hasn't finished above 500 in the last few years. Matter of fact, Ron Rivera hasn't had a season as the head coach of the Washington franchise where they finished above 500. They finished at 500 this year at 8-1, which is a very, very strange situation. That, remember a couple of years ago that the Washington football team, as they were known, won the NFC East with a 7-9 record where everyone in that division was under 500. Now this year, everyone was at 500 or better, and because of that one tie, which is still the stupidest thing that the NFL does, including the overtime, which is based solely in the overtime rule, that actually would have kept the Commanders from making the playoffs this year. Rivera's seat is relatively hot going into the year because of the fact that they apparently now have his replacement waiting in the wings, kind of like what's going on with Cleveland by them bringing in Jim Schwartz to be the defensive coordinator. If Kevin Stefanski gets fired midway through the season, if they falter, they've got a guy who can run the ship until the end of the year and then decide if they want to remove the interim tag. What's going on with the Commanders right now is them signing assistant head coach to Andy Reid in Kansas City. They signed Eric Bieniemy, and Bieniemy is now going to be an assistant head coach and the offensive coordinator in Rivera's system with the Commanders. But yet, if something happens and the Commanders falter, they could actually cut him loose, and then it makes a much easier and a salary beneficial situation to keep Bieniemy, even though it's only a 2-year contract. If Rivera were to get the axe midway through the season or at the end of next year, they've actually got Bieniemy there, and then they can actually sign him to an extension, remove the interim tag, and still be able to benefit from it. And it would be his first head coaching position. And I got a feeling that Bieniemy is going to be one of the next really good, strong coaches in this league, with everything that he's done with the Chiefs organization, working his way from a running backs coach up to winning a couple of Super Bowls now in the last few years over with the scheme that he's run with Patrick Mahomes. Washington is going to be very good to watch on offense if they can get decent play out of the quarterback position, whether that's going to be whether they bring back Heineke, whether they're actually going to run with Sam Howell. I don't see a scenario where Carson Wentz ends up coming back, especially with his $26 million cap hit for next year, and also considering in a couple of games last year, fans at home were cheering for Taylor Heineke to go in when Carson Wentz was starting. You would find that would be the case when you've got a high draft pick or a free agent that fans latch onto. It was the case. It was the case with Jared Goff with the Rams. It was the case with Baker Mayfield with the Browns a few years ago. People want the shiny new toy. And Heineke certainly wasn't the shiniest new toy, but he was a hell of a lot better of an option than Carson Wentz was. And Heineke came in there and almost got them into the playoffs, and then he gets hurt, and then when he's ready to come back, they still ended up going with Wentz towards the end there, and missed out. And again, how the NHL has corrected the overtime rule with now actually adding the shootout in to eliminate ties as of 2005, just after the lockout, how the how Major League Baseball has gone to the ghost runner on second base now, or starting a runner on second base once you get into extra innings. So you're not getting the 13, 14, 15, 16 inning games and burning your players out in the regular season. It's ending these games a lot faster, is good. The NBA has a good thing there. College football has the right thing, not having games end in ties, and the way that they do their overtime system is quite honestly how the NFL should be doing it. And yet we had 2 ties last year, and then we had 1 the year before that, which is absolutely ridiculous. That you go to a 17th game and it actually means that you don't have the possibility of a tiebreaker. It certainly lowers the percentages of a tiebreaker by having teams have an odd number of games. And then what do? You still have a tie on the record to where a team like the Commanders gets shut out of the playoffs because of a tie. But Bieniemy and Heineke aside, the other big news that came out was, we all know as of back in November that toxic owner Dan Snyder has retained a Bank of America securities to look into possibly selling the franchise. And the Commanders franchise is worth $5.6 billion, considering how the former name of the franchise was so toxic, how Snyder's image is incredibly toxic, all the new reports that have come out as late as 2020 and 2021 about the culture and some of the harassment and some of them have been sexual harassment cases against Snyder within the Washington organization. The fact that this franchise is worth that much money is, but now reports come out that Amazon CEO and third richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, has actually hired a firm known as, and I'm just trying to locate it now, he has hired Allen and Company to start researching the idea of possibly putting a bid in on the Commanders franchise. Now, granted, Bezos would be able to outbid anybody, and Allen and Company were tabbed in recent years, and also helped facilitate the investors putting in bids for the sale of the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers, which actually now have much better ownership groups in place. Bezos certainly is not squeaky clean, but he would do so much more to help rebuild the Washington football name, especially take the Commanders and move them forward than what Snyder did with their previous 2 names at that point, and have the reputation of the franchise regress. And especially with when your football team and your sports teams are doing well, especially in a big market like that, how some of the money starts to trickle in to neighboring businesses. We've all seen what it did in Cleveland when LeBron James was here. We've actually seen how it's done in smaller markets like St. Louis when the Rams were successful back in the late 90s, and the Blues in recent years. We've seen what it's done with the Utah Jazz in one of the smaller markets that there is, quite honestly, in the Big Four leagues, and how it's helped revive that up until recently when they traded Donovan Mitchell, and the team has now kind of come back down to earth and done a little bit like a rebuild or a reboot, so to speak. I wouldn't call it a full-on rebuild with the way that the NBA is structured, but it's also something that Bezos, we've heard some of the stories in recent years about mistreatment of Amazon employees or working conditions or things of that nature. We've also heard a lot of success stories about that. You haven't heard a whole lot of people coming out of the Washington football organization, whether it was the previous name, the Washington football team name, or now the Washington Commanders, having too many good things to say about the franchise under Snyder's control. And if it's a $5.6 billion asking price, that would basically be Bezos telling his CEOs, his board of directors, and every one of his employees, hey, we're buying lunch today, and we're going to pick up the tab. So this is nothing for him. And it would actually be nice to see, somebody with his philanthropic nature, come into ownership of a team like this. I'm not saying go out and buy all the other Washington franchises, although I wouldn't actually put it past them to be able to look into that here. But I mean, we've seen stranger things happen. We've seen that the two major sports teams in the city of Buffalo are both owned by the same ownership group. That would be the Pagula family, and really we've seen now the Sabres start to turn the corner. We've seen the Bills really start to improve and be amongst the NFL's elite in the last couple of years. And it would be very interesting to see what a new shot in the arm would do for an ownership group with this much optimism going into a new year. You're going to have a new quarterback, or at least a more bona fide starter. You're going to have a head coach in waiting, or at the very worst, Bieniemy's going to be able to strengthen and take some of the pressure off of Rivera to be able to manage a game a little bit better. We're going to see what's going to happen now if Rivera may now also be able to maybe focus on the defense a little bit more, what this does to a guy like Chase Young. Does he take that next step and kind of launch himself into the ranks of guys like TJ into the ranks of guys like TJ Watt or Myles Garrett or Aaron Donald? Does he get into the conversation to be up on the Mount Rushmore of current defensive linemen who can absolutely dominate a game, snap in, snap out? Does it actually also mean that it improves relations with sponsors now? As we saw a lot of sponsors in the DC area start to pull away from the team in the last few years. Certainly Bezos would be able to bring Amazon as a sponsor there, but would that really happen because they're also a league sponsor? I don't see FedEx Field, changing the name to Amazon, but then again, let's also keep in mind that Bezos oversees the company, or I don't exactly know what to call it, but but the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, where Amazon is based out of, is technically owned by Amazon. So Amazon owns the naming rights and the arena, and then changed it, and then put so much into helping grow that team to where now the Seattle Kraken are one of the best teams in the National Hockey League, certainly in the Western Conference. They're certainly going to be in the playoffs. They're running down a division championship in just their second year after being one of the worst teams in all the NHL last year, playing in a building that Amazon owns, and did so much more with the structure of the former Key Arena, with the scoreboard, with the way that the seating is set up, how loud the building gets, the fact that the ice surface is used purely through the rainwater that's filtered in and recycled from the roof of that building. That's just some of the things that Bezos and Amazon have been able to facilitate. So if he can do that kind of change in Seattle with an expansion hockey team that was always a pipe dream to get an NHL team in Seattle, imagine what he can do with a storied franchise like the Washington Commanders now, and for a team that's been around coming up on 90 years, has several Super Bowl titles, and is really looking to improve their image. So let me know what you guys think. Does Bezos actually buy the team? Does he actually have the means in place that if he doesn't place a bid, does he actually have the research where somebody within his group or his inner circle might be able to make such a bid. Do you actually think if he does this, does this also translate into maybe him acquiring a couple of other professional sporting franchises with his financial capital and net worth? Does he go the Pagula route and buy all four Washington teams? So let me know what you guys think. I will be back with you guys sometime next week. Everyone have a great weekend. Take care.